Amazon and tariffs.
Yeah, there was this report suggesting they might actually start showing tariff costs, right there for online shoppers.
Which sounds like a big deal.
It does. And what's fascinating about that initial report is just how quickly it became a real talking point.
Mm-hmm.
The White House reacted pretty strongly, didn't they? Calling the whole idea hostile and political.
A hostile and political act, yeah. And they were really pushing the Buy American angle.
Right. But then Amazon, they came out pretty fast.
They did. They clarified, said, look, maybe it was considered for this lower cost thing, Amazon Haul.
Right, the Hall concept.
But it was never approved.
Yeah.
And definitely not happening on the main Amazon site.
Apparently, this even sparked a phone call between President Trump and Jeff Bezos.
That's what the report mentioned, yeah. So quite a reaction, even though that specific idea didn't, take off.
Exactly. It still kind of brings the whole impact of these tariffs right into sharp focus, doesn't it?
It really does. So what's the broader context here? Where does this fit in?
Well, I mean, this is all playing out against the backdrop of these ongoing trade discussions, especially, with China.
Okay.
And Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, he recently highlighted the potential fallout if these tariff issues aren't sorted out.
Fallout like what?
Like significant job losses in China. He threw out some big number.
Big numbers.
Yeah, possibly 10 million jobs lost quite quickly, he suggested, or maybe even 5 million, even if tariffs just decreased somewhat.
Wow. 10 million. That really underscores the kind of stakes we're talking about here.
It absolutely does. These aren't just abstract numbers. It's about real economic consequences, potentially huge ones.
And these potential losses in China really put the scale of these tensions into perspective. It's very human, very economic globally.
Definitely.
But it wasn't all challenging news on the trade front, was it? I thought I saw something else.
Well, that's right. Secretary Bessent also mentioned, some positive movement. Yeah, in trade talks with countries like India, South Korea, and Japan. So progress elsewhere.
So while the China relationship remains complex, let's say.
Very complex.
There are signs of maybe smoothing things out with other key partners?
Exactly.
Okay, so the Amazon thing brought tariffs back into the conversation. But what else are we seeing?
In the wider economy, that might tie into these trade policies. It feels like there's more to the story.
Indeed. Yeah, there are other indicators. We're seeing reports about the U.S. trade deficit in goods, for instance. It's apparently widening.
Widening.
And at the same time, you have firms reportedly cutting back on job vacancies.
So fewer openings being advertised.
That seems to be the trend reported, which, raises questions about how these trade policies might be filtering through to the actual job market here.
And it's not just businesses, right? What about, regular people, consumers?
Well, that's another piece. U.S. consumer confidence has reportedly dipped.
Dipped how much?
Quite significantly, actually, down to a 5-year low, according to reports. A 5-year low. That's notable. That shows a real shift in how people are feeling.
It really does. And what's maybe even more telling are some of the specific things coming from individual companies.
Like what?
Well, HSBC, the bank, they've reportedly increased provisions for potential bad debts.
Okay, meaning they're worried more people might struggle to pay back loans.
That could be one interpretation, yeah. It suggests maybe some concern about borrowers' financial health in this climate.
Interesting. Who else?
Adidas, they've warned we might see price increases on their stuff here in the U.S.
Ah, so passing costs on, potentially. That directly hits consumers.
It often suggests exactly that, yeah, that the costs from tariffs or related uncertainties are being felt and might get passed along.
And are there others?
Yeah, a few more signals. UPS apparently hasn't issued new financial guidance.
Which can mean they're just unsure about what's coming.
It often signals uncertainty, yes. And GM, General Motors, they actually postponed an important conference call. Electrolux, too.
The appliance maker.
That's the one. They've lowered their forecast for the U.S. market this year.
So it's not just one sector. We're seeing banking, apparel, logistics, auto, appliances. It seems pretty broad.
It does seem to span different industries, which suggests it's not just isolated issues, but maybe a broader sensitivity.
Right. When a big name like Adidas warns about prices going up, what does they usually signal about the wider impact on just everyday goods?
It tends to indicate that these trade policy costs, the tariffs, are really starting to bite at the business level.
Okay.
And, businesses eventually have to decide whether to absorb that or pass it on.
Mm.
If they anticipate passing it on, that means higher prices for you, the consumer.
Which could then feed back into that lower consumer confidence we talked about.
Exactly. It's all interconnected. Lower confidence, maybe less spending, businesses feeling that. It becomes a cycle.
It really highlights how tangled everything is, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So for you listening, it really makes you think about the ripple effects, right?
Hmm.
How these big international trade policies, from an idea about showing tariffs online that didn't even happen,
Right, from that spark.
to these wider economic signs and company warnings, how does it all ultimately influence the choices and, well, the bottom line for businesses and for us as consumers?
Yeah, it's a really complex picture. Lots of moving parts to keep an eye on.